where there are old triumphs, but also new frontiers, with challenges as great as the state itself, but a belief the best is yet to come, bringing you the faces, the places, and the spirit of the last frontier. This is Frontiers with Rhonda McBride.
Welcome to this Memorial Day weekend edition of Frontiers. You know, it's a good time to remember some Alaskans that we have recently lost. And first up, we'll take a look at the life of Charlie Etok Edwardson, a champion of Alaska Native land rights, definitely a force to be reckoned with, maybe not in the ways that you would expect. Later in our program, the legacy of Dan Cuddy, who was more than just a banker. He played a key role in building our state. And we'll head to Juneau to celebrate the opening of the Walter Soboleff Center, a home for the Alaska Native cultures of Southeast Alaska. Now, this Memorial Day weekend, Barrow is mourning the loss of a whaler and a man who battled long and hard for North Slope land rights. Charlie Etok Edwardson died at the age of 71 while out on a whale hunt. He was the oldest of 12 children, remembered by those at his memorial as someone who fought for the future for everyone's grandchildren.
To the fullest extent of the law, they have the right to freedom, as we all do.
Now, when it comes to Charlie Etok Edwardson, it seems that lyrics from the Chris Christopherson song, The Pilgrim, were probably written with Charlie in mind or someone like him. He's a prophet, he's a poet, a walking contradiction, but also never afraid to speak truth to power.
The Seward's Folly #2 is going to fall.
Charlie Etok Edwardson's views never changed. Russia's sale of Alaska to the United States was wrong. That the land was the birthright of Alaska Natives, their title to it defined by their use of it, hunting, fishing, their long history of surviving upon it. Thanks to oil, the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act was born. It cleared the way for construction of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. The deal? 40 million acres and almost $1 billion, the largest land claim settlement in United States history.
He recognized early the significance of Aboriginal land rights. Charlie?
Even 20 years after the passage of ANCSA, the fire in the belly still burned.
United States have never acquired our land correctly. It is still stolen property under duress.
Etok maintained ANCSA was a bad deal.
Where is the sense of outrage?
He railed against the architects of ANCSA.
Where is the sense of commitment?
What would he think about the three of you, particularly the three of you, getting together to remember him?
I don't think he would be too put out by us sitting here talking about him. He might have a little puzzled smile on his face as to what those three guys were up to.
Three guys who were once young guns in the land claims movement: Willie Hensley, Emil Noddy, and Byron Malott. In those days, Etok was a frenemy, both ally and adversary.
Charlie didn't want to work with us. He was always on the outside pushing us.
We could not afford to be erratic, right, in our negotiations, and that's a role that Charlie could play. He could ask for the moon and help make our demands seem more responsible.
Charlie was the sort of fellow in a negotiation that if you didn't have him as the radical possibility, you would probably want to invent him.
You know, he sounds like a madman a little bit.
Etok was very passionate and sometimes violent. In terms
what do you mean by violent?
Well, because he was in the sense that he was a stutterer. He couldn't express himself as fast as he'd like to be able to, and he oftentimes got very frustrated.
When words failed, Etok could turn physical, as he did when he turned up at a reception once and confronted Byron Malott.
He punched me in the nose, broke my glasses, caused a little cut on my nose, and turned around, walked away.
You played the role of the bad guy lots of times.
When a documentary producer interviewed Etok on the 40th anniversary of ANCSA, he weighed in on Hensley, Noddy, and others who helped negotiate the settlement.
I couldn't depend on them.
okay, whatsoever. And that they were that yellow. See that yellow there? That's how I felt from them.
Racist white devils, blah, 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 blah.
Even though Don Mitchell frequently found himself under attack by Etok, he wrote about him extensively in 2 books about the native lands fight.
Let's not get overly romanticized about who Charlie was. Charlie, for all of his many faults, starting with being, for most of his life, a very ugly drunk, if you got to be straight about it.
I was a high school alkie. Didn't want to admit it for a long time.
At the Mount Edgecombe boarding school, Etok also got hooked on politics. That's where he met William Paul Sr., the Tlingit civil rights activist who inspired him to fight for land claims. The main lesson he learned from Paul:
nobody was going to do anything about it except the Native community itself. And if you didn't step up and do something about it, nobody was going to do it for you.
Don Mitchell believes Charlie became what he calls the walking conscience of the land claims movement.
It was to make the world a better life for people in the villages, and it's easy to forget that. And Charlie, just by being physically present in front of the people that were making the decisions, you couldn't help but be reminded as to what this whole thing was supposed to be about.
Charlie had some unpredictable ways of getting Washington bureaucrats to pay attention. Once he walked up to some in a fancy restaurant.
He was going to make a gigantic mess, and so he grabbed the tablecloth and he jerked it away, expecting it to, all the plates and everything to be flying all over the place, but as it turns out, not a thing moved, and everybody was just stunned.
The value of drama Charlie learned as a kid during what became known as the Barrow Duck-In, a protest that began when a hunter was arrested for shooting a duck in the spring, the traditional time to hunt birds. Charlie's grandfather gave him a gun and some bullets and instructed him to go out and kill a bunch of ducks.
He says, I want you to give every man, woman, and child a duck at this meeting.
With ducks in hand, a crowd gathered in front of the federal agent's hotel room and demanded that they be arrested too, but it was impossible to arrest the whole town.
The federal agents were so overwhelmed, they resigned from federal service right in front of our eyes, crying, as begging for their salvation. And that's when I first saw Eskimo power at play.
He sometimes was the kind of person that I felt I lacked the courage to be very angry, to be almost enraged at the way Native peoples had been treated.
Anger, but also a faith that his people are deserving of respect.
With us in our own environment, we're somebody. We're precious, we're important, and we're competent on top of that.
Charlie, when he died, was out whaling with his uncle Percy New Seguinha, and we have word that his crew caught a whale, and the whalers are saying, now we can heal. Well, still to come, we remember an Alaskan who also pushed into new frontiers. We'll hear about Dan Cuddy, a pillar of Alaska's economy that many Alaskans leaned upon.
We have a story of 27 families that put 18 months of their lives into building a village, a home for themselves and their future. Our Inupiat culture goes back thousands of years, carried by a strong sense of community. Our relationship with our natural surroundings is at the heart of our culture. By investing in future generations through development that is balanced with the love of our land, the Gupi Corporation brings together traditions of the past with visions of the future.
For more than 60 years, Spenard Builder Supply has helped Alaskans build their backyard barbecues, their curb appeal, their arsenal, and their hideaways. From helping you pick the perfect decking, to mixing paint that's just the right shade, to finding the power tool that pulls it all together, SBS is here to build with you. From ground to roof to everything in between.
Now offering financing with no payments or interest for 12 months. Visit us today at your local Spenard Builder Supply.
You can't get very far until you start doing something for somebody else.
Lions Club. We serve our community through vision screening and donating eyeglasses to those in need.
We serve by promoting fun, safe, and competitive youth activities statewide.
Together, we serve by staging events like blood drives, food collections, and the Miners and Trappers Charity Ball.
Lions Club is young and old, men and women, giving back to the communities they serve. Won't you join us? Call or visit our website to find out how.
I think the Teacher of the Week segment is extremely important because teachers are important. They partner with parents in educating children to teach them right from wrong. I just think specifically when it comes to education, to letting those teachers know that they are appreciated and they're doing a phenomenal job. Anytime someone goes above and beyond what's expected, they should be patted on the back. They should be given accolades. It helps give them that extra push.
There are many Alaskans who have made our state a better place. As head of First National Bank Alaska for more than 6 decades, Dan Cuddy was in a position to make a difference. He talked about that in a recent documentary on Anchorage's first 100 years. Now, Cuddy's own story captures the heady optimism of those early days. He became bank president at the age of just 32.
I went into the bank in 1951, and the bank was 28 million, and now it's 3.2 billion, so it's 100 times larger. So that whole 60 years has been very interesting.
Now, Dan Cuddy not only found success, but he helped others find opportunity. And joining us in the conversation, 2 people who are going to bring some perspective to the table. Margie Johnson, who is a board member of First National Bank Alaska. Mark Langland, currently chairman of Northrim Bank, but also former CEO and president of Northrim. You know, I guess one of the things that Alaskans probably don't realize, Margie, and we'll start with you, is that he was very much involved in the military. It was a big cause to him, and we have a photograph of him. There's another photograph within that photograph of him as a young soldier, and apparently it was about the time that he went with General Patton to liberate Buchenwald, a concentration camp.
Yes, indeed. The military was always a big part of Mr. Cuddy's life. You have to realize in 1942, when the Japanese invaded, for every Alaskan, it was a call to arms. And it certainly was the case in Dan's case. He was actually given a deferment because he was needed as a bulldozer operator. But indeed he went, and do realize that his brother didn't make it back from that war. And so as a result of that, the military has always been very near and dear to Dan's
how did it affect him as a banker?
Well, I think everything that he could possibly do for the military, he did. I mean, we have branches on the base, and the YMCA is named after Dan on the base. And I think he enjoyed teaching finance to young soldiers. Actually, we had a real estate developer at lunch one day at the bank, and Dan looked at him and said, "You're a lawyer too. How much pro bono work do you do?" And the guy said, "Oh, I just don't have time for that. What about you? You're a lawyer." And Dan said, "I take every single pro bono case that I can that has anything to do with the military." And the guy said, "Well, surely you don't have to do that, Dan." And Dan looked at him and said, "Now, surely I do."
Now, one of the things we have here is a photograph of you and Dan in later years. It's a lovely photograph. You have a beautiful hat on, one of your trademarks. But you met him years ago when you were a young woman. Can you tell us about that?
That was many, many years ago when I was much younger than I am now. Yes, I had determined I wanted to buy some ivory to make some money, and I needed $500. And the only thing that I really owned free and simple was my sewing machine. But it was a good sewing machine. And so I took it into the downtown branch, which was the main headquarters then, and plopped it on the teller's cage and said, "Hello, I need to borrow $500. And to their credit, they didn't call security. And I said, "It's got all the attachments, just need $500. And so he authorized a small loan for me. But back then, you could give loans on the basis of a handshake and character.
It was a special time. Well, of course, one of the big events, seminal events, was the '64 earthquake. And we have a photograph of the bank having 8 stories added to it just after the earthquake. Now, Mark, I have to ask you about this. What do you think about that, taking that kind of a business risk after such a devastating quake?
Well, that's true. One of the interesting things is the ownership of the bank. You know, the Cuddy family owned most of the bank. So he had a very strong financial statement. So he was taking risk of his own capital, basically, to do that. And at that time, when the economy was small and struggling, it was really a major shot in the arm for the community. But it gave confidence to the other business community and individuals that this was going to be something to the future, look to the future rather than look at the past in the sense of where we've been and the issues we've got to deal with. He was a very strong personality in that sense, and that helped a lot. Walter Hickel was a good customer of theirs, and Dan helped him build a new tower right after the quake. So a lot of things happened that were very risky, if you will, at the time. But it all worked out well.
You know, today we tend to think of banks as sort of McBanks. You know, they're sort of nationalized, cookie cutter.
Right.
But I think that every banker, Northrum included, wants to bring these modern amenities. And, you know, we have a photograph here of the first time that First National Bank of Alaska got an ATM. There he is standing there. Is that a struggle to bring these innovations to Alaska?
Well, it was because it's a small economy and a small market, and these new innovations were they going to work? Did they need it, and so forth? Even though Dan was a very conservative banker, he was also aggressive in certain areas, and this was one of them. He was innovator in that sense.
Well, we just saw a photograph of a dog team going up to a drive-in only in Alaska. You know, Mark, could you tell us a little bit about some of the challenges that Dan Cuddy dealt with, the only in Alaska challenges?
Well, again, the economy was small. And our capital structure of our borrowers was very small too. And the management structure or the quality of our borrowers from a skill standpoint was lower than it was in the lower 48. And the capital that they have that would lower our risk as lenders was not very much. So we were all taking, as bankers, we were all taking a lot of risk and betting on the come that this was going to work. And so, like Margie said, it was a character more lending. In those days, the regulations were such that you could do that. Both banks, Elmer Rasmussen's bank and Dan Cuddy's bank, were both kind of family-owned, more family-owned, so they could do more than you could if you had a big national bank. And that's where this community bank is so important. It created the stability so you could grow in Alaska.
Grow our state. Well, Margie, just in wrapping things up here, can you tell us, share a memory with us of why you felt that Dan Cuddy was so important to our state?
Absolutely. I describe Dan, first of all, as an American patriot, secondly, as a family man, and thirdly, a banker. And in that order, I mean, a young fellow to go off to war such as he did and come back, but make no mistake about it, family was first and foremost to the Cuddys. I know he spent the last month with his children, and they were all reading him chapters from Bancroft's history of Alaska. So Alaska was always a great part of his life.
Right, and do you have any thoughts of Dan Cuddy? Was he the banker in the right place at the right time, Mark?
Oh, no question about it. I think again, when you look at our history, you needed that strong personality, you needed that strong character, and you needed the stability that a banking system is so important, but more important in Alaska because of what we were all about and how we were growing and coming out of those times in the 60s, even up until the 70s. You know. It was a struggle for everybody in a higher risk environment. And you had to have these strong personalities and conviction of the future. And the customers had the feeling that it was a stable environment. It was consistent, trustworthy, or whatever words you might want to use. And that made it possible for the borrowers to take the risk.
All right, well, we're out of time, but we're going to continue this conversation, and it'll be posted on our website. And I'm sure we're going to be hearing some more great stories at Dan Cuddy's memorial service. It will be held this Tuesday night at 6 at the Wendy Williamson Auditorium. A reception will begin immediately after the service at the Lucy Cuddy Center, also on the UAA campus. Still ahead, the legacy of Dr. Walter Soboleff, a Tlingit scholar and statesman, one of the inspirations behind the new Alaska Native Cultural Center in Juneau.
The Alaska Native Tribal Health Consortium provides comprehensive health services for Alaska Native and American Indian people across our state. In addition to world-class care at the Alaska Native Medical Center, our work delivers health services for rural Alaska. From cutting-edge technology for the best care possible, to modern construction of clean water systems and health clinics, to health training and outreach that honors our culture, our vision is that Alaska Native people are the healthiest people in the world.
Let's never forget the cost of freedom or take it for granted. As a veteran, you are entitled to certain benefits when you pass. To learn what benefits are included, ask for our free Veterans Information Kit and learn how a smart plan can provide all of the things that are not covered. We all enjoy the freedom you provide for us, and we thank you for your service. This is Dominic Casara, owner and operator of the Cremation Society of Alaska. Call us at 277-2777 or visit our website.
With the new KTVA 11 News live stream, you can stay up to date on Alaska news, sports, and weather every day from anywhere.
In Homer.
In Tanana.
From the capital.
At Denali Base Camp.
From McGrath.
Here at the Port of Anchorage. In Kodiak. Here on Prince of Wales Island. From Barrow. In North Pole.
And we mean anywhere.
In Portland.
From Boise.
From Denver. In Washington, D.C.
From Reykjavik, Iceland.
From Afghanistan.
At 35,000 feet above South Dakota.
Try it today at ktva.com/stream.
Now we go to Juneau for a look at a new cultural milestone, the opening of the Walter Soboleff Center, a place to keep the renaissance of Native cultures in Southeast Alaska alive. It's a dream decades in the making for the Tlingit, Tsimshian, and Haida. And joining us now to talk about the opening of the Sea Alaska Heritage Center is the director of the Sea Alaska Heritage Institute, Rosita Worrell. You know, I have to wonder, it's named for Walter Soboleff. I wonder, you know, he died at 102. Do you kind of wish he had lived a little bit longer to be there?
Well, yes, I wish he had lived longer to be there physically, but I think he was there spiritually. We did a special ceremony for him in which, you know, we call on his spirit. And so I think he was there. I mean, he was there definitely in the hearts of so many people. He was there.
What was special about Walter Soboleff?
I really, in thinking about, you know, what is a lasting contribution that he made besides being this wonderful, spiritual, kind, gentle, wise person. And I think in the long term, when I look back and I think about what he did, I would say that he helped bridge the world between the natives and the non-natives.
As you saw this beautiful building open and all the ceremonies surrounding it, how did you feel about that?
We were extraordinarily busy, you know, and I have to just say that our staff was just wonderful. Everybody working and scurrying around and, you know, trying to make everything just go perfect. But it was also a time of reflection. And for me, you know, I really, you know, was thinking about where do we go from here? I think it was a significant accomplishment for our people to be able, you know, to raise all of the money, you know, to support the building. And then to finally see it there, it, you know, was truly a moment of celebration. It was a remarkable journey, a fun journey, and hard work too.
Speaking of journeys, on your opening day of celebrations, you have canoes coming into to the Juneau dock and calling out to the crowd, and the crowd calling back. What was that all about?
That ceremony was the owners of the land And in this case, it would be the Aquan. This is their homeland in the Juneau area. And traditionally, what would happen is that the owners of the land would call out, to a visitor, "Who are you? Who are you? Tell us who you are." And they would respond, "We're just Katquan," and they would identify themselves. Then the owners of the land, the Wushkitan, and the Sinedi and the Yechtehitan would say, "Well, what's your purpose? Why are you coming here?" And in this case, the Chishkat, Chishkut people responded, "We are coming here to celebrate the grand opening of the Walter Soboleff building." And so the hosts would then say, "Welcome, come ashore." And then, of course, then there was a lot of singing and dancing and greeting one another.
Well, one of the more moving aspects of your celebration was going inside the center to the special clan house that's all of cedar, and it's a special experience to go in there. I was there before it opened, and just the smell of the cedar and just being in that room. How will this clan house play a role in your mission?
This clan house, I think, becomes the symbol of our tie to the past, recognizing that we once lived in clan houses, we lived in communal groups, and it was the center of our being, the center of our place.
Well,
and
there's
so
beautiful art in there. I mean, a beautiful panel was unveiled.
Yes, right. And what we were trying to achieve with that panel was, to show our traditional culture, but yet again, that embracing the modern world. I don't know if people heard me, but I kind of forewarned our friends and our donors that this is phase 1. We're looking towards phase 2.
Onward and upward, right?
Yes, right. Right.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Rosita Worrell, President of the Sea Alaska Heritage Institute, for joining us. Extended interview with Rosita Worrell on the Frontiers section of KTVA.com. You'll also find web extras, photo galleries, and my blog, which will help you keep up with me, so you can follow me on Twitter and the faces and places of Alaska in 140 characters. Well, we want to thank you for joining us for this week's conversation. We hope you have a safe and happy Memorial Day weekend. It is a good time to remember those special people in our lives. And as always, from all of us at KTVA, may you find your own frontier.